An interesting concept to understand is that porn doesn't have to be something that hurts your relationship. Something to understand when it comes to integrated relationships is that you have to know how to keep the spark alive. Now, something to understand is that before an individual reaches a level of integration where you are more easily influenced by your sexual attraction being related to domestic qualities, before you're there, oftentimes from a lower cup space, the excitement, right? The novelty, the variety, the limerence, those new feelings. That's going to be what's most appealing. That's what's going to be most exciting. That's going to be what's the most enticing thing for you to come across. That's for most people. Who's ever the most attractive, whoever has attributes that resonate with your idea internally of what you consider masculine or feminine, depending on what you like. These are going to be the things that attract you the most. Now, over the course of a long-term relationship, let's say a woman has your child when she gains a little weight. Or let's say she gets a little bit older and she starts to get some wrinkles or some gray hairs. Right? These are all things that are liable to happen in a long-term relationship. Let's say you get a little bit older. You will too. Right? The thing to understand about integrated relationships is that you want to be able to move from a space of developing kinks and fetishes, to focus on sustainable aspects of an individual's personality and or narrative surrounding the relationship, as far as different types of role play, scene setting, things like that, in learning how to sexualize as much as possible. And this is important on both sides. And what do I mean by sexualize? Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, which means that in order to be fully happy in an integrated relationship, whether that's monogamous or non-monogamous, you have to learn how to make realized chemistry greater than curiosity, or your repression will ultimately lead to sexual duplicity, or it will lead to a lower quality of life. Right? Repressing yourself sexually across the board in order to stick to the masculine submissive principles, or to be more attracted to the novelty and limerence of new relationships with new people, and to allow the novelty and the excitement and the casualness of those relationships to be more exciting for you. That's the feminine dominant. So when you're feminine dominant, it's the thrill of the chase, right? It's feminine to chase. When you're masculine submissive, it's going to be either repressing yourself to be masculine submissive with someone else who's masculine submissive, meaning that your overall sexuality won't reach its heights and its peaks of what it can be. Now, how easy it's going to be to integrate from this space is going to depend on how much you allow yourself to be exposed to either before, during, or after this relationship. That's the thing about prematurely integrated relationships. Not all prematurely integrated relationships are masculine submissive with feminine dominant. Sometimes it's masculine submissive with masculine submissive. Sometimes it's masculine submissive exercises and self-control. It's just a relationship that's not in the full polarity of two people in a high cup space, and then integrating from there as far as moving up into the overflowing cup space. When you don't move up from polarity into the overflowing cup space, then you don't become integrated. But are you able to create and sustain a cycle of energy that integrates both aspects of the Madonna and the whore, of both the gentleman and the gigolo? And are those going to be integrated in your view to where you can have a long-term relationship with an individual with a foundation of love being part of that, without your polarity being diminished because of it? Right? It's like, when you first meet a woman, oftentimes it's the space that you spend away from her that gives her the opportunity to grow in her feelings for you, right? Oftentimes it's the feeling of anticipation, of not knowing what's coming next, that gives her those flitters and those jitters, right? Give her those butterflies. It's the feeling of not knowing if you want her back or if you like her back, right? It's the feeling mystery about your feelings, your emotions, who you are. Even if a woman says she wants a man who's emotionally intelligent or emotionally vulnerable, That vulnerability is really just about you being honest about your intentions, right? But you have to understand that there's a time and a place for everything. The thing to understand about just that new feeling of having a new person around, that refreshing feeling, you can have that. But if that becomes your primary focus and you lose track of your responsibilities and priorities, you're not going to be a trustworthy person to build a future with, right? That means that you're going to have to choose to pretty much repress yourself across the board in order to be faithful to your partner, unless you understand how to integrate your shadow, to sexualize your partner on a greater level. And what do I mean by sexualizing them on a greater level? What I mean by that is learning to have the capacity to sexualize your partner on a level to where you're able to view and observe different aspects of things about them, to become sexually attracted to and to grow and to build that over time. To understand the things that attracted you to them, and then to know how to shift those preferences, to shift your imprint through your interactions with them. And through having the capacity to do this, you're able to make your attraction something that's sustainable. Now, something to understand about what love can do when an individual is in love, right? I'm not one of those people who's going to act like it doesn't exist. It gives you that love. It gives you that capacity to choose a way of looking at your partner that finds them as the most attractive and most appealing, right? Now, what would you naturally do when you look at your partner that way? You will validate them. You will make them feel as if they're worthy. You'll make them feel good about themselves, right? Now, of course, it's their responsibility to ultimately feel good about themselves, to have a certain level of that self-preservation cup already together. But what you also have to understand is that over the course of prematurely integrated relationships, this becomes something that feels either obligatory and expected, or something that someone feels entitled to, and it no longer has the same value of validation because of exposure, because of familiarity. That's why what you really have to think about is the narratives in your mind, right? There's reasons why porn doesn't have to be something that hurts your relationship, right? Now, understand that sexual relationships take place on 3 different levels. I talk about this all the time, right? There's social, sexual, and self-preservation. So social is going to be based on casual sex relationships, novelty, as well as just from the submissive ego, feeling attraction towards a person who's casual or who you don't know that well. In the mystery of that, that's what's associated with the social level. It can also be placing a high level of validation, or the level of validation that you place on receiving compliments from strangers, or from being able to acquire casual sex, right? Or casual sexual attention. That's the social level. The sexual level is going to be one that's going to be based more in the heights of the dom-sub dynamics as far as the power exchange. So there's the polarity base, the masculine, feminine, dominant, submissive aspect. That's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it is going to form around the emotional safety, right? The emotional safety, the intimacy, how well you know that person, having love, having trust, right? Having comfort, having security. Those are 2 different sides of the same coin, but both of those sides of the coin need to be fulfilled in order for a relationship to be at a place where it's integrated. So when I say that, what does that mean? Well, one way of looking at it is like this. You want realized chemistry to become greater than curiosity. Now, something to understand is that there is an interstice. There's this overlap between emotional safety, or a certain type of safety that comes with dom-sub dynamics. Understand that there is a sexual aspect of both the animus and the anima for both the man and the woman. If the person who you're the emotionally closest to, right, the most intimate with, the person on your sexual relationship, which is your primary partner, whether that's monogamous or non-monogamous, is the person you're willing to do the most things with, to go the furthest and the deepest into your sexual shadow, right? To actually not go deeper into your sexual shadow than you're willing to integrate. That's a big thing for me as far as my ideology. There's nothing that I would do with a casual sex partner that I just met, or someone I don't know like that I wouldn't do with a woman that I love. That's just some real stuff. Nothing that I would do. And also, unless a woman has already disqualified herself for one reason or another, I'm not going to do anything with a woman sexually that would cause me to disqualify her from me. Right? That means I don't judge a woman for anything she does with me. That's also a rule that I have. There's certain principles that I live by. So understand this. The social level is your attraction to outside people or to strangers or acquaintances. So sexual level is your primary partnership or your close intimate relationship. Then the self-preservation level is your relationship to yourself, right? Now, the self-preservation level can be masturbation. It can be self-confidence. It can be your spiritual security, right? As far as like the alignment of your beliefs and your actions. The self-preservation level can be about feeling as if you are in alignment. The self-preservation level can be about your self-image, your body image, right? The self-preservation level can also be your capacity as far as your sexual skills, being able to teach whatever it is that you like. When you know how to teach what you like, then it keeps you from being in a position where you are overstimulated. Because the thing to understand about sex and the anima and the animus is that the peak of your sexual experiences, to a certain extent, is going to be something that you crave, something that you desire. If it's an experience that stretches you and then it becomes part of your norm, then it gets imprinted into your preferences as part of your sexual palette, part of your sexual psyche. And if you grow accustomed to and addicted to the stimulation that you receive from an individual that you have an inability to teach, or it's something that's just attached to their body or person, and you can attract that same level of pleasure and excitement and intensity from an individual who is willing or able to be in a healthy relationship with you, then you put yourself in a position where you exacerbate a Madonna whore or a gentleman gigolo complex. Right? That's what you do. But everything's a calculated risk. You don't always know everything ahead of time. That also keeps in mind this. Many women have an inherent fear. I think both men and women have a fear of sexual overstimulation. Right? I think both men and women fear that to a certain extent. And when I say that, what do I mean by it? What I mean by it when I say it is that there's a fear of alpha widowhood. Alpha widowhood. And the fear of one-itis, right? I know people oftentimes talk about how monogamy is unnatural. And I agree that monogamy can be somewhat unnatural for most people in most relationships. I also believe that polyamory is not natural either. That just as natural as the desire to sleep with multiple partners is the existence of sexual jealousy and being territorial, mate guarding and mate poaching and things that are like within the animal kingdom. That's just how animals work. As humans, if we're going to take the nature argument, we got to keep that a bug. We also have to keep it a bug that the desire for sexual novelty isn't only a male thing. It's not. I think one thing to keep in mind when it comes to this particular conversation, right, is that in the grand scheme of interactions between men and women, that monogamy is to, like, culturally and socially push monogamy is like the socialism of sexual dynamics, right? Because what happens when there is an influx of the cream rising to the top as far as the most desirable or the most wealthy, right? Or more, the people at the top just get more. I mean, that's a biblical principle. He who has not even what he has shall be taken. That's just how the life works. That's the rule of the kingdom. That's the rule of the jungle, right? In an open market sexually, where hookup culture is the thing, where serial monogamy is a thing, but as the truth of sexual dynamics becomes more prevalent and more exposed to men, and men get them more on game, there's going to be some men who are no longer able to leverage their resources to gain access to women. Men are in a situation now where they have to know how to be sexually appealing to women, because with the moving goalpost of consent, where only enthusiastic consent is seen as valid, even though there's a plethora of reasons a woman may agree to have sex with a man. You have to understand that prostitution is almost seen under the banner of coercion and rape, because it may be as if there's a power dynamic where the fact that you have resource, you can take advantage of a woman in a vulnerable position. And that's part of the reason why prostitution is illegal. I don't think it should be illegal, but I'm not a patron of sex work. I'm more of an individual who would like it to be legal so that conversation can be had about that aspect of things, because that goes into different narratives of Me Too as well, right? And different aspects of cancel culture and what I call consent culture. Right? But what happens? Once things feel too imbalanced, the men at the bottom will rise up and, eat the rich pretty much. That's kind of how it goes. And I think that's an interesting narrative, too, to think about with you. Because on the show, Joe Goldberg was the quintessential nice guy, but just taken to the zenith. You know what I mean? Taken to the Zed. You know what I mean? Take it to the end. And it was crazy how he actually ended up being the eat the rich killer. And it seemed so in character with him. That's just something to understand. But I am getting off on a little bit of a tangent. Let me get back to the topic, right? That when it comes to porn, and the reason why I'm talking about this right here is because when we're understanding the cycle of energy, when it comes to a relationship's not going to work unless the cycle of energy is on point. Sexual energy is going out and coming in on a social, sexual, and self-preservation level. Right? So part of the outsourcing game, part of sexual energy transmutation, which is what you need to do to be integrated, to be happily monogamous or non-monogamous without that disrupting your relationship dynamic, is either you have to know how to do sexual energy transmutation. Right? So what are some examples of what that could be? Well, you can watch porn that is connected to different traits that your partner has or exhibits or is willing to engage in. Kinks and fetishes. You can use that classical conditioning, or you can use your understanding of different things to build your arousal, right? For traits that your partner has or different things that they do. And through interacting in this particular way, what you can end up doing is growing your attraction or your fetish or your kink for a particular thing. If your girl's gaining weight, watch BBW porn. If she's a particular skin tone, you want to boost your attraction to that particular race she is, or ethnicity, or height, or body type, or age, or whatever talent she has sexually, or whatever skills you want to learn how to teach. Now that is one that can become a tricky territory for some. If you get overstimulated in your dominant ego and then it's above what your competency level is, then you can feel unsatisfied. And that's another way. You can be overstimulated in the dominant or in the submissive ego. Right? You could be overstimulated in the submissive ego by experiencing feminine dominance in a way where you're not integrated enough with your shadow to experience more pleasure through someone who is masculine dominant. Which means that you need someone to force and push their way beyond your boundaries, beyond your mental blocks and barriers through manipulation, pressure, or force, some type of mind games to get you there. And unless they're willing to do that, and unless you have the capacity to consent to the level that's necessary for you to get where you need to be, then someone who's willing to play with you or to manipulate you or force you or take you or someone who has very blurry lines when it comes to consent, or very blurry lines when it comes to ethics, that's going to be what it takes for you to get where you need to go sexually, in order for that aspect of your shadow, that aspect of your animus or your anima to be activated, right? And then let me flip this too, because the dominant and the submissive ego for men and women are different, right? So the dominant ego for the man is going to be more so in the sexual area. Man makes love to a woman's body. The dominant ego for a woman is going to be having access to a man's mind and emotions and his resources. So as a man, there's also pleasure in being a provider. There's pleasure in being emotionally connected to a woman. There's pleasure in loving a woman. There's pleasure in having a woman who's on your mind. There's pleasure in that submissive experience. That's where your submissive ego is as a man. It's not really the sexual aspect. You have a submissive sexual ego, and I could touch on that a little bit, but that's not primarily where your submissive ego is. So you can have some great sex, and it's not going to be that difficult to separate it. Whereas for women, it takes a little bit more trauma or a little bit more life experience to get to a place where she can separate them. And that's not always even a good thing, because sometimes it can happen just unconsciously and do a masculine submissive exercise and self-control due to feeling unsafe, right? Covert contracts. So when you're watching porn, you can transmute your submissive sexual ego attraction from porn or from the social level conversations, where you get turned on having a conversation about different sexual ideas, and then you bring this back to your partner on the sexual level. Like a woman could even flirt with a man sexually, get turned on by something he says, and then go deal with her man afterwards. I've done that many times. I'd be on panels talking to women, and I'll start talking about sex and stuff like that, and then it's like, you know what, I need to call my man. I need to take care of this, right? That's just the energy I give off when people interact with me. And to me, it's a beautiful thing when a woman has the capacity to transmute that energy to her partner. That means she's on somewhat of an integrated level, right? See, the thing to understand sometimes about the feminine submissive rather than the integrated feminine is that when a woman doesn't have certain skills yet, doesn't have certain masculine security, doesn't have certain feminine security, something that can happen is that she may just go up into the feminine submissive through a bout of limerence, due to novelty, due to mystery, due to mystique. She might eventually get into the Delilah syndrome, because she won't be able to sustain being in the feminine submissive unless there's a good, cycle of energy and a good path towards integration and a certain level of clarity. So she's not going to integrate from the feminine submissive. She's going to stay there till her cup gets low, and then she's going to bait and switch. But in these type of scenarios, a woman will oftentimes lose attraction to a man if he is becoming emotionally invested, financially invested, socially invested, above what her internal measuring stick of what she believes how much a man should value himself or could value himself. So a woman with a low cup will purposefully choose a man who doesn't value himself enough to hold her to a standard because it feels like less work. But ultimately, she won't have the same level of respect for that man. So sometimes a woman may be in an in-between space where she has a love-hate relationship with the masculinity and the dominance of a man. Because him having a stretching personality, a stretching program, it requires her to be in her feminine energy more often, more consistently. And if she doesn't have enough in her self-preservation level to maintain it, then it may cause it to shut down. And it can feel like a daunting task. Now, how things are paced out can play a role in that, but the level of limerence that's there, the level of excitement and novelty that's there does play a role. All these things can play a role in each other. But it's just important to understand that. That's why masculine submissive and masculine dominant don't really mesh that well. Now, the integrated masculine can work with the masculine submissive, and then they can move up into, to more of an integrated space. Or the masculine submissive can get to experience what feels like feminine submissive, or get to be feminine submissive. But the thing to understand about feminine submissive is that most feminine submissives don't have a certain level of understanding how to control their sexual energy transmutation. So it's like their desire for validation and their desire for the sexual pleasure will automatically cause them to shift their focus directly on who's giving them the most pleasure at that time, who they're the most excited about, who they have the most emotions towards, and they may be monogamous to this individual for a period of time if the cycle of energy is good. But then typically, if that starts to slow down a little bit, then if someone else excites them, then they'll just monkey branch. And it's difficult to set down roots like that. So if a woman is unable to form a good cycle of energy from the feminine submissive with the masculine dominant, and doesn't develop an understanding of sexual energy transmutation and not playing with fire, and playing with fire is probably how she got with the guy in the first place, then she's not going to be able to get integrated. Then she's going to probably drop down from the feminine submissive, view being digmatized or limerence or falling in love is a bad thing, and then become like a no limit soldier, or just say fuck it, let go of all the masculine security and just focus purely on the feminine energy, and then get into being a sage burner where it's just all out there, where it's like it's on 100 or it's on 0. Like either she gonna be celibate for a while, or she might have multiple partners, or she'll just go through some different bouts of just the shit she goes through, situations and whatnot. Or she might end up in a poly relationship, but she find her a good hotel nigga, like a poly dude himself, that she might, get into a polygamous relationship. Some of those sage burners, like the God is a woman type, they'll try to find them like 2 beta males at the same time to be her her co-husband, to find a way that works for her. Be like, all right, cool, you know what? Let me get a cuckold. If she's on a high level operating, she might be able to find her a cuckold who's going to be like a provider type, and then get to be in the poly relationship with the woman's in control. That's kind of the type that they like with ethical non-monogamy community, like on Reddit. Oftentimes I notice there's a lot of hate towards anything that appears to be patriarchal in nature, like a man having a harem or of unicorn hunting, as if there are, like one penis policies, one way open relationships. It's certain things that actually work for some people, and the woman likes it as well. Sometimes the woman's the one who asks for it and requests it, but because of the fear of things being patriarchal, certain things are just looked at from this perspective of what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as if the submissive and the dominant ego for men and women aren't flipped. So sometimes what'll happen is the woman will find a dude who is a good provider type or a good stability type of guy, and then with this particular man, kind of wear him down to the point where he becomes like beta eyes, right? I believe somebody called it death by 1,000 concessions. And then eventually he'll get broken down to a place where she's really in her feminine dominance, thinking that she's in her feminine energy. And then she'll break a man down to a place where, if he allows it, then she'll pretty much want an open relationship. And that's going to be one that's not focused on sexual energy transmutation. It's really going to be draining energy off of their sexual relationship and pouring it into the social, rather than it being offshoots of the sexual already being on point, and then getting some extra outsourcing on the outside. And the outsourcing game works different for men and women. Now, there could be the mana principle, right? You need either a cuck or a stag. So if you're using the mana principle, you need either a cuck queen or a cuckold, or you're going to need like a stag, or you're going to need some type of person, right? Because the thing to understand about the mana principle, that's where you're pouring out of your submissive ego to a person who hasn't necessarily earned it, just to keep those flowing. You should pretty much get rid of the mana principle if you are in a long-term relationship, unless the needs of your partner are already met and you have more to give than they have to take. So like, let's say a woman is a nympho, and then she does a masculine submissive exercise and self-control to have sex with somebody outside of that relationship, especially if she's honest about it. Let's say they decide to get into a free use relationship, right? Let's say they decide to get into a swinger relationship. Let's say they decide to get into some variation of open relationship. Let's say they decide to get into the game, right? Well, in those type of situations, it's all good to the extent that your woman has a whore mentality, whole tendency, and you have a pimp mentality. That's just my personal belief. Like, if your woman has whole tendencies, you either pimping or simping, right? If she stays at home, or she a homebody, it's kind of up in the air. If she don't do a bunch of extra shit on social media, it's not out there trying to get like male approval on social media, like sexually and shit like that, then it's up in the air. If she doesn't have certain levels of poor tendencies or mentalities or modern woman mindsets, then it's kind of up in the air. You don't necessarily have to have as much of a pimp mentality because she's not putting herself out there like that. But if she is, whatever risk is being added to the relationship, you should be benefited from it. And I believe that goes both ways. I do believe that goes both ways. Right? And I think that's an important concept to understand. So the man of principle would be like emotionally or financially and all those other things as a man when it comes to another woman when you have a primary partner. If you got a little extra, especially a woman on point, show her some appreciation. The only other time the man of principle would work is if you fucked up real bad. Right? That's like if your wife cheated or she playing with fire and she doing too much. So you go take another woman out on a nice date. That's some petty shit. It is. Might make you feel better though. Or that would be like the lick back. The lick back is a form of the man of principle. As long as it don't, like, I'll say this. For a man, it's like, okay, you gotta let that hurt go, dick. And then you also have the man of principle. For a woman, you have let that hurt go, pussy. And then you got the man of principle. Let that hurt go, pussy. Let that hurt go, dick. Two different things. Let that hurt go, pussy will oftentimes get the woman caught up on the man. That's the non-stick principle, right? Because oftentimes limerence can be like an internal defense mechanism to try to get you away from a person who you feel like you shouldn't be with. And sometimes it's for right reasons. Sometimes it's for wrong reasons. Sometimes it's just saying you want to get somebody out your system. So let that hurt go, pussy oftentimes works like that. For a man, it would be more so emotionally, like his ego getting caught up in a validational loop, and then him not being able to differentiate between his ego and the validational loops and actually having an emotional connection that's based in realized chemistry, based in the reality of his relationship with a woman over time. Likewise, for a woman, it's very easy in these situations for both men and women who get caught up in limerence to judge their partner for how their partner interacts with them and to compare that to how someone new interacts with them. When someone new doesn't have to deal with the things they have to deal with, their partner has to deal with. They're presenting their representative, their best version of themselves. That's who they're presenting. That's who they're showing up as. So automatically they're getting treated as that. If you showed up that same way for your partner, you'd probably be getting treated the same way. And then sometimes it's based off of covert contract, masculine submissive exercise and self-control, where they just don't know enough of what you got going on to create a comparison between what they think you're able to do and what they're really getting, right? One thing I know how to do is I know how to make a side nigga feel like he's the one getting cheated on. Real shit. Because if a woman sells an image of being pure and pristine and I slutting her out the way I do, if a dude try to talk to her because he thinks she's not a certain type of way and he's willing to wait and not try to press her line real quick, and that's which maybe the energy she feels like she needs to get comfortable with the guy, then by the time she get comfortable with the guy, I've been fucking the whole time. And I'm also having her doing shit to show me, all right, cool, you need to show me something. So I might have a woman send me another man money. I might use a nigga for opportunities. It is what it is. It's nothing malicious. It's just the game. Because I understand that when you are the new guy in a scenario, because I've been a side nigga on many occasions, that when you are the new guy in a scenario, you have the factor of novelty. And you have the factor of creating false safety because you're not invested enough to say something to the woman, or you're not invested enough to actually try to check or correct the woman about behavior she has that are unseemly or unbecoming. right? This is how that work husband shit turned into some extra shit. But I say if you in a long-term relationship, you actually want your shit to last, you have to understand this rule. You either got to be that nigga or let her fuck that nigga in peace, right? And part of that is sometimes you got to have your snatchback game on point. You never know when you might need it. So I practice it on some side chicks I have. I practice it on some main girls too. So it's just like that's something to have. But when we understand in transmutation, we're talking about porn. This is such a bigger topic than porn, right? Another thing that can happen is this. Let's say you're working on yourself. Let's say you're getting an influx of validation. Sometimes the value of validation from the outside can be stronger because of the novelty if you're not already in an integrated space yet. So you can use the novelty of it, the casualness, the excitement, the validational loops to motivate yourself. You can use limerence, you can use trauma, you can use pain. You can use all these things to motivate yourself to get into a position where you are improving yourself. But the thing about improving yourself is you need to avoid the glow up principle. Because sometimes you can get too big for your britches, right? Think about the movie Love Don't Cost a Thing. That's a great example of the glow up principle. Understand that how you think plays a big part in how you move. Those two things are intertwined and interconnected. Right? So let's say me as a man, if I'm masculine submissive, right? Or masculine submissive exercise and self-control. Let's say that if I assess my value based off of how many attractive women give me attention or how much money I have, social validation, financial money, money, how much money I have, how much social clout I have, things like that. If that's what I value myself on as a man, then if I'm dealing with a woman and I don't feel confident and secure within myself, then I'm not going to support her to be her best self as far as getting all the money she can get, because it's going to make me feel insecure. Or it's going to be a situation where I'm not going to be willing to bring her into social environments if I know that's what she wants me for. If I know other people may have more in those environments, and that may be a real possibility. Another thing that can happen is that if I'm dealing with a woman who's down for me and she supports me, she's there for me, and she's submissive with me, that I might feel like I can only get the level of attractiveness in a woman that I can afford financially, that I can afford with my lifestyle. I don't think like that. To me, that'll cause you to be disloyal the moment that you come up. Because what if that woman is the person who's helping you come up? Right? I think about loyalty. That's how you stay loyal. You have to understand that. So sometimes you can take that social level of the validation, right? Then you pour that into the self-preservation level to help boost your self-esteem. You may say that's insecure, but listen, my thing is this. To the level that you have intrinsic motivation to do the things you need to do to improve the quality of your life, is to the extent that you don't need to have insecurities. Right? If your intrinsic motivation and discipline is just so on point that you don't need any external validation at all, cool. But hopefully your life is in order. Your relationships are in order. You have loving, integrated relationships. They're sustainable, right? Your work life is in order as far as you're doing what you want to do business-wise. Your health is in order. You're taking care of your body. You're taking care of your life, right? Your relationships are intact. If that's not the case, then you need to have a little bit of fear. You need to have a little bit of anxiety. You need to have a little bit of a negative feeling. That's your ego being a social survival instinct, letting you know when you're performing well versus when you're not. Now, you can set that standard for yourself, which is what it means to be masculine, right? Or you can allow that standard to be set by someone else, which is what it means to be feminine. Masculine security is trusting the standard that you set and wanting that standard more than you want another person, right? That's masculine security. And feminine security is to want a person enough to be fluent and to be flexible in whatever that structure is. Being integrated is when you have both masculine and feminine security that are taking place within the same relationship where there is a good flowing cycle of energy. That's what an integrated relationship is, which means that this person feels like the logical choice, the principal choice, and they feel like your emotional priority, your sexual priority, the person that you desire. And by those things connecting to each other, the sex and emotions mixing, right? The logic and the excitement, right? The security and the intensity, right? The security, like once the safety and the dom sub dynamics have a positive correlation to one another, and you're not in a place of fear where you'll run away from that intensity, where you'll run away from how connected you can be to a person, and you're free to love and you're free to allow that to grow, and you have a mature mindset that says that you want it to grow and to be sustainable, then you're going to be in more of an integrated space. So then you get to experience things like actually making love, right? Understand this, it's like the 9-7 dichotomy, right? It's like the pacifier principle. What's the pacifier principle? Well, on a 7 level of sexual attraction, a woman may give you head to pacify you because she doesn't feel like having sex. Now, there is a caveat in this that I might want to bring up, and this is kind of an integrated thing. It can be like a one-off, or it can be like a something that can occur for a woman who is, I'm gonna break it down for you. It can have with the masculine submissive exercise and self-control too, right? But it works like this, right? Pacifier principle. On a 7 level of sexual attraction, a woman may give you head to pacify you, right? A woman gives you head to pacify you. Then it's based off of the non-sexual energy that you're already pouring into her. Then she's able to transmute that into the energy to perform a sexual act. And then she is then in her masculine energy because she's in her dominant sexual ego. And through her dominant sexual ego, she provides you pleasure that she feels is equivalent to the value of the validation that you're providing her. So if it's much more about the value of the validation than the actual sexual attraction, then a woman may be more inclined towards just loving to suck your dick all the time, right? Especially if she's somewhat sexually repressed, then that sexual repression of her vagina may transmute, because that's something that happens, right? Like sexual repression perverts things. I'm not saying it's a bad perversion, because I love women who love to suck dick. I absolutely love that. Right, but she may repress from her vagina because she may have some negative thoughts or feelings wrapped around it, or fears wrapped around it if it's not opened up yet. And then that can translate into her having an oral fixation where she may want her vagus nerve stimulated, the vagus nerve stimulated, right? That can create orgasms if a woman's turned on enough, aroused enough. But that's where we start getting more into the 9-7 dichotomy, right? The 9 level, she's giving you a head to pacify herself. Right? Pacifier principle. On the 7 level, she's trying to pacify you. On the 9 level, she's trying to pacify her. Very important to understand. So, in order for sexual energy transmutation to take place, there has to be a baseline level of safety and a baseline level of sexual attraction that's present. You can boost both through communication, through overcoming the ego, through shifting the ego, through working with the ego and becoming more integrated, becoming more secure in yourself. You can hear the truth. When you're able to create win-win scenarios and create that safety through a woman not feeling overly judged or overly pressured in your understanding, you can reach a place where the safety gets high enough to where if the sexual attraction level or the physical attraction level is high enough, then it'll naturally start to transmute. If you know how to use interoception and plant seeds, then a woman can become sexually attracted to your hands, how rough they are, or the veins in them, because the veins in your hands or your forearms may remind her of a vascular large penis, right? She might think about your back and about how strong you are and the curves of the muscles in your back, how broad your shoulders are and how strong you are, and attach that to the idea of you lifting her up. She might, if you have a beard, she might look at your beard and then imagine providing your beard some nutrition, putting some of her lady juices in there. and that may turn her on, and it just comes off as very masculine. You may be someone who smells very good, and that gives her flashbacks to sexual experiences she's had with you, or maybe even positive sexual experiences she's had with others. And then if you're able to overcome that, see, that's part of the imprint. It's different non-sexual things that influence a woman's sexual attraction due to her fantasies and her experiences. Once you give her a greater experience in the same lane of something that formed an imprint, and then create a new experience that supersedes that, the new peak of pleasure is the new place of authority, because that's painting an aspect of the sexual part of her animus, right? So that's where flag planting comes in, and that's also where you got to understand how the non-stick principle works, right? A woman's in love with the man when he is the highest combination of both the sexual and the non-sexual parts of her animus, meaning the social programming, or also her emotions, right? So it's like her emotions and her social programming, those different things, how she feels about the guy and how he feels about her. This is the gentleman aspect. That's just the man who's kind to her. And then you also have the sexual aspect, which is the polarity aspect, right? This is where a man is able to open her up sexually, where he can push her, stretch her, right? So the fear of alpha widowhood is really a woman who wants to avoid being stretched too far sexually to where she can't go back. That's one reason why some women don't want to sleep with a man if his dick is too big. It's not just because of the fear of the pain. It's also the fear of what if she can't go back. And I've actually heard women say that before. I've dealt with women who've gone through that. Now, you can also overcome an experience of a woman being with a bigger dick too, but it just takes more knowledge. It takes more game to be able to do that. But because it's like, what do you attach with masculinity and femininity in her mind? If a woman has a great experience with something that she sees as more clearly, easily able to identify as masculine, then that becomes the standard. So then big dick becomes better until a woman has better dick that is not as big. But once a woman has certain experiences, she can feel like she can't go back. Then it's the non-stick principle. So sexually, that's where the woman's submissive ego is. It can happen like that. But the thing to understand is that when you are trying to form an integrated relationship, being a peak of some of those sexual experiences, having a wide variety of things within your sexual skill set, your toolkit helps. Another thing is this, getting back to the porn topic. Look at the scenarios. Think about role play. Think about learning how to sexualize a scenario, make it role play, and integrate different aspects of your program, different things of your common interest, as well as different aspects of your everyday life into the scenario. If you don't have money, shit, you can do some DIY, BDSM, and make it just like some working man type shit. Like if you're a plumber, shit, you can watch some plumber porn, send it to her, watch it together. You can sexualize scenarios. You can develop kinks and fetishes like this. Like you can watch porn of dude sneaking up behind his wife while she's cooking and hitting it from the back. You share that with her. You start working with interoception and start working with these ideas and these fantasies in her mind, attaching the scenarios to the arousal through classical conditioning. And the next thing you know, over time, you both become more sexually attracted to living a calm nuclear home everyday life, where the mundanity of it doesn't become mundane, where you might do little kinky shit here and like some exhibitionism, right? You might have a garden out in the back and you go get freaky in the garden, right? Or you might have like it doesn't even have to be where people can see for real. You might have glass windows and you just keep the windows open while y'all do what y'all do, right? You find ways to get it in. You might try to sneak and do a quickie while the kid's taking a nap. What are you doing to increase these things, right? You might get some head in the parking lot in the airport. I ain't telling you nothing trying to get you to go to jail. I'm just saying, can you find like these porn scenarios that are fantasies for you that you can create as shared fantasies? And part of this helps with both the polarity and the safety, because where you get pushed the furthest as far as your sexual fantasies and what you're willing to do is going to paint a big part of the imprint as far as the sexual aspect of the anima or animus. But there's a safety in having these peaks of experiences, in having these outlandish experiences where you have a story and a narrative to share with one another that creates and perpetuates a narrative that you're sexually compatible, and perpetuates a narrative that you two are still having fun, that you're still getting it in, that you're still doing the thing. And when that is a narrative that you begin to invest in, the idea of being sexually compatible with someone over a long time, and that over the course of years that it continues to get better and better and better, and that the fact that they know your body and understand your personality and know your buttons, know what buttons to press, that they know the things that make you feel good better than anyone else does, that the fact that they know and understand these things, that you can communicate and talk with them, that it's damn near to the point where they know you so well that you don't have to say certain things to them in order to get your needs met. Once this type of thing gets locked into the cycle of energy, then you create a narrative where realized chemistry becomes greater than curiosity. And that's where you reach a more integrated space. Now, you also have to understand what type of integrated you're going to be. Now, you can be integrated from the polarity foundation first, which is the actual peaks of experiences. Another way, now, something to understand with this is this. If you're starting from the gigolo side, you have to make sure that you maintain, like, if the woman's attracted to and she likes the feeling of that taboo, then something has to feel wrong, or something has to feel a little bit questionable. Something has to push those boundaries. You can get in consensual non-consent. She may need that feeling of something being a little bit bad. So always try something new, because if the woman hasn't integrated beyond that point of needing that, then you have to understand that she may not be on an integrated enough level to truly be attracted to too many domesticated qualities. So that means that you want to maintain having a certain level of playerism about you, right? Very important to understand. You want to maintain that. Now, a woman who gets very, very integrated, she's going to get to the point where she sexualizes you sitting there and taking care of your kids, right? You reading to your kids, you cutting the grass, right? You changing the light bulb. It's just traditional masculine things that come off as masculine in her mind and create sexual attraction to you, right? And once this occurs, like, a woman gets to a really integrated level, then a woman can get sexually aroused by you expressing your emotions, right? By you saying how you feel, right? By you being expressive, by you showing your love for her, right? And the thing to understand is that the low cup space of, like, the masculine submissive typically idealizes the integrated, but they skip the level of polarity, and they don't recognize that they don't have enough energy in their own cup in order to maintain certain types of relationships where a person would actually want to be with them, right? On that type of level. So oftentimes the low cup people will say, oh, this is real masculinity, and like talk about Uncle Iroh, or talk about this is real masculinity, and then talk about this or talk about that, and give an example of someone who is extremely gentle. That's the gentle giant thing, right? But understand that for some women, the gentle giant just means that they want to feel like a little puppy who gets to bite and claw and fuck with a big puppy, a big dog, and that the big dog is so big that they're unbothered and unhurt by it. That's typically what the feminine submissive will do from time to time. Sometimes it's animus possession. Sometimes it's just shit testing you to see if she's comfortable, to see if she's safe. And the integrated feminine has enough capacity to create her own safety within that cycle of energy to where shit testing isn't necessary, or at least is to a bare minimum, or at least when it is done, it's something that's a little bit more conscious, a little bit more aware, and something that's more relative and reasonable and somewhat respectable to that situation. That's where the integrated feminine reaches, right? But you also have to understand that you have to think about maintaining the sexual dynamic as well. See, once you get more integrated, the idea of sex getting better with the person over time becomes more attractive than simply the novelty of sleeping with somebody new. I know a couple who are swingers, and these swingers, they say, listen, it don't matter how many people we have sex with at this party, we're always going to end the night having sex with each other and then spending that time with each other, right? See, there's a difference between outsourcing and cake eating, right? If you are tender dick, or you're just a tender woman, or your sex is connected to your emotions on a certain level, or if your emotions are connected to sex on a certain level, you start cake eating when you start trying to mix the non-sexual and the sexual together with the person on a social level, to where you naturally start pouring out energy from your self-preservation in your sexual level, right, into the social level, which is a person who's not really your primary partner. And what that does is it causes you to neglect yourself and to neglect your partner. And one thing you also want to avoid with the glow up principle is when you use that to boost your self-esteem, or when you use that to motivate yourself to grow and to improve, that you pay tribute, that you do certain things in good faith, and that you pay tribute with your growth to your partner, because your investment is going to be based off of investing yourself, right? Also, if your emotional investment is tied, and you got to be honest with yourself, if it's tied to what you go through, right? If it's tied to your struggles, the peaks and the valleys and the plateaus, don't try to hold your partner to a standard of consistency or of dealing with you so damn healthily that you don't have any type of emotional variety. Most women, they need emotional variety. So don't hold your partner to a standard of them handling you in such a way that is so noble in your social programming through your animus projection, your animus possession, that you don't recognize that you aren't holding other people to the same standard under probably less strenuous circumstances, right? You don't know how those other people would react or respond if they were in the same scenario. So part of the sexual energy transmutation at times is, let's say you pour out some of your negative energy to the social level, or some of the responsibilities that the sexual level would take care of, or the self-preservation level would take care of, and then you divvy those responsibilities out on the social level. And by divvying those responsibilities out on the social level, especially through masculine dominance, if you've got game like that, but at the bare minimum with feminine dominance, and even less than that would be masculine submissiveness, which means straight up transaction, or masculine submissive exercise and self-control. It's like, it's you keep your submissive ego, you protect it, and you point that towards your primary partnership, basically. So that means that if there's any feminine submissiveness, which is showing intrinsic desire in a place of your submissive ego and acting on that to pour energy out, because a lot of energy is poured out in the feminine submissive, you don't do that with the social level. You don't do it at the social level, you do that with the sexual level. So like, let's say you run a game, somebody on the outside, or let's say your game is just on point where you ain't got to run game like that. You can just be straight up with them, right? Because of somebody's attraction to you, or them projecting their anima or their animus onto you, the positive aspects of it or the desire onto it. Then if it gets high enough, you can just be very direct and honest about, okay, yeah, I'm not doing this, right? Or you would have to you would have to really prove yourself to get to a point where it would be worth sacrificing what I got going on, but I'll entertain you, right? Like, when that's the mentality you have towards the outside, the social level, then what you do is you're transmuting energy from the social level into the self-preservation of the sexual level. So like, let's say there's a responsibility. Let's say you have a really high sex drive. If you have other sexual partners, right, as a man, then that's out of your dominant ego. That's taking pressure off of how available your woman has to be, which takes off, like, it opens up more opportunity for her to feel more intrinsic desire. Because the moment that your sex drive or your libido bypasses the level of attraction she has to you in that moment, then she has to transmute her non-sexual energy on a social self-preservation level in order to transmute that into sexual energy to share with you on the sexual level. And if she doesn't have enough in her cup, then that's going to eventually lead to a place where her cup gets low, and then she's going to leave out of the feminine submissive. She's not going to be able to function within that relationship dynamic. Right? Very important to understand. That's why sometimes you take a break off of it and you do the mana principle. You might just give your girl some head, right? That's a smaller level of the mana principle, right? Like, instead of saying, okay, well, she's receptive to the dick, then I'm gonna give her some head afterwards, right? Or let's say you use the head like candy and the dick is like it's like the junk food. It's the head. That's the clitoral quick burst of excitement with the like fireworks going off. Boom. But then there's that slow cooked meal. That's that, that meat and potatoes. That's that dick. When you got some good dick, that's what it's like. Oftentimes, when a woman's on a really high energy level, anything less than getting her walls beat down, it's like she'll eat the dick because you're not letting her fuck yet. That's a primer principle. But if she could, she would love to get fucked. Well, you got to understand that in a long-term relationship, sexual attraction is dynamic, not static, and how much energy she has is going to be dynamic, not static. So her cup may get low due to different things, depending on how submissive she is with you and how the power dynamic works and how good of a leader you are. Now, if the power exchange is on a high level, like you're like a master or you're a 24/7 dom, and she stays on point with the responsibilities that you give her, and you know how to think about life, to think about different things going on in her life, and to set a plan together to make things more efficient, and she follows that plan, then she'll have more energy in the self-preservation level, feel better about herself, and then she can share that with you. But we also have to understand is that part of that motivation may be willing to be more attractive to other people. And this is what makes it difficult, like the glow up principle. This is what makes it difficult for some people to encourage their partners, right? Because if you encourage your partner and then they take the information that you give them or the investment you put in them and they put that on the social level, you feel taken advantage of. So you kind of want to avoid that. But there's ways that you do that, right? Understand this. A person who gets with you at a place in their life where they don't accept themselves, if they ever get to a place where they do accept themselves or start receiving acceptance from people that they felt that they weren't qualified for, they're going to view you as someone that they're qualified for where they are right now, which is why they aren't doing more to improve themselves. So when they get to a place that feels better, or they meet someone they think is better for whatever reason, they're going to be willing to do more to get that person, or they're going to be willing to step outside of the box, step outside of their character, step outside of their principles, to be more open-minded. This is the glow-up principle, right? They're going to feel as if they're now better than you. That's the glow-up principle. Is it true? No, most of the time it's not true. But that's where they're going to go to. Right? And oftentimes it's going to represent itself through limerence. So yeah, there's a lot of ways this shit works. But when it comes to transmutation, is ways I think it works best. Gotta be on point with certain things. So, like, how do I put it? When you're taking in energy and you're pointing that into the self-preservation level, from the social level, and that's a risk you're allowing your relationship to have, you should be paying tribute to your partner almost. And you have to make sure you're running shit so player to where you don't have less resources because of dealing with another person. That's man or woman. Whether that's sexual resources, emotional, financial, social, whatever it is. Whatever it is that you were previously offering, you got to keep maintaining the same thing, and then even make it go higher if anything about that situation is stressful to your partner. And if it becomes too much of a problem, then you don't cross the line with the person as a way of on good faith saying, you know what, I recognize that I like this person too much, or this yada yada yada. I still love you. I still want to be with you. I'm going to leave this alone. You should be able to do that without even having a conversation with your partner, right? Or at least knowing how to take a step back, pull back, run the game. You got to know how to catch yourself. Don't let somebody do something for 2-3 days, 2-3 months, love bombing you, or playing games with you. Get your head so full up with ideas that you're going to overlook that the person that you're with is going to treat you better and do more for you over the course of 6 months to a year, and that they have your best interest in mind better. I just don't think that's wise. I don't. So if you ever do that, then what you need to do is you got to make it up to your partner. Whether you tell them what's going on or not, hopefully you have a relationship where y'all can be honest and talk about things. But if you can't, then sometimes you just got to fix that shit. You want to make it so that if your partner read the exact text messages that you were sending to the person, or knew exactly what you were telling them about your situation, or that if they sat there and overheard a conversation between y'all or saw y'all interact with each other, that they would still feel secure and confident in your relationship. That's how on point you should be. If you run a shit player, that's how it is. That's like a woman who knows how to run that attention whore game, but she's like, oh, I ain't ever linking up with him, right? Or dudes are trying to get at her and she's taking the opportunities that they're providing to her and then sharing them with her man. Like, oh, this guy's trying to send me money to go get this food. You want to go get something? Or this man is sending me this money for, he want to do a photo shoot. You want one? Let's do a photo shoot together, right? Or let's, this guy is, he wants to send this money for this trip. Let's take this trip together. Let's get this hotel room. See, oftentimes the attention whore game is just a woman who already has a primary partner who understands sexual energy transmutation, and you are not the priority. Therefore, she's going to get whatever she can get out of you. Just don't run that game on a man who's your primary partner. It's just how it works. Sometimes you have to recognize when you have a shadow and to integrate that shadow. If you recognize there's something wrong with that behavior, you need to have some self-awareness, some self-honesty, right? But if you recognize something's wrong with a certain behavior, then what you need to do is either find a way to get the need met that behavior represents with your partner. And if you're unable to fully, then what you need to do is find out a way to do it that doesn't put the brunt of the negative aspects of that shadow with your partner being the recipient. Outsourcing game. Right? Like, as a man, you can have your game could be so on point. Man, one time I had a submissive, right? Got a hotel room the night before. I donned her out. Next night, I had her pay for the hotel room I had with another girl. It was with my main girl. My main girl knew about it. The other girl, she knew about it too. They both knew what was going on. I didn't have to lie. I didn't have to promise. I never took the girl on a date. I dealt with her for like 3 years, off and on. And yeah, she paid for a hotel room for me and another girl the next night. Same hotel, not the same room. It was a different room. But I didn't tell her I was gonna pay her back, but I paid her back and sent her some extra. Sometimes you just got to build that type of rapport. That's how you build that trust. Is you borrow, and you build credit with somebody. You borrow, you pay back. You borrow, you pay back. Then you lend. To me, I like to borrow, pay back, and then just do things when I'm just thinking about you here and there, right? And then also have rewards for good behavior. So that's kind of how I do things, right? That's just like how I like to build credit. You got to win the game to play. You got to win the game to change the rules, right? So for me, that's how I make sure women reciprocate me on the level that I want to be reciprocated. How open is your pocketbook to me? How often are you treating? How often are you buying this or buying that for me? Because I know how much I'm willing to give for somebody I care about. So I just require that the same thing is invested in me in return, and that's all I'm saying, right? So this is just Coach Brody. I think I'm gonna make this about sexual energy transmutation or sexual integration and a cycle of energy. Something I'm gonna make up a dope name for it. It's Coach Brody. I'm out. Also, check this out. Check out my website. If you want to reach me for anything, it's BrodyDharma.com. 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 You can go there to book me. I do music. I'm a music producer. I'm a songwriter. I'm a rapper, singer, songwriter, music producer, boxing coach, dating and sex coach, public speaker, spoken word performer, and I do a lot of different things. If you need to hit me up, we can do coaching sessions. Just hit me up. Best way to reach me is through my website. It's BrodyDharma.com. And when you reach me on there, just hit me up and we can set up a coaching session. A lot of people have questions in the comments. I love the questions in the comments. If it's a little bit too personal, a little bit too specific, that's coaching territory. I give enough free game on here as it is. So if it's a very specific scenario, hit me up, set up a coaching session. We'll get on a call, and then I'll help you with your situation. And you want to make requests, that can work too. If you want to make specific video requests and you want to make sure that it gets done, go to the give portion and hit my Cash App. If you felt blessed by a message that I did, right, then I'm gonna pass the collection plate around, right? And with the collection plate, you go to my Cash App, you hit my Cash App, and just, let me know what your thoughts is, right? Cool. You need to send me, Cash App a nigga, right? Pass the collection plate around. That's if you feel blessed. You don't have to do that. But the more you support, the better, because I got to pay for this website. And I'm trying to grow this platform, get ready to start writing some articles, and get ready to start preparing this book, right? And preparing these books I'm going to be writing on sociosexual dynamics, on the sexual polarity quadrant, on different things, on psychology and sex. I might even write a book on the Bible and sex. And this is going to be a series that's just related to these sociosexual dynamics, right? Also, check out my website for music that I have that's out right now. I will be dropping more music soon. That's something I am doing. I have been performing lately, and eventually I might get into comedy because I like comedy. I've been putting like little jokes and stuff in some of my sets, performing because I've been on tour lately. But yeah, this is Coach Brody.